This one, like, staggered. This is probably the most insane statistic that I've seen since the 40% of our 65-year-olds only have $1,500 a month to live off of, okay? 3 years ago, in 2021, the median age of a renter was 33. 3 years ago. In 2024, it's 42. So the median age for a renter has gone, I mean, that's a massive jump, 33 to 42. And what, this is, just Zillow, it was on Zillow statistic. I have the actual article link on the Alpine Capital Solutions page. But what does this say to you? What are some implications of this being the case? Home prices, so home acquisition, home entry point has never been less affordable. Let me just give you some context. When I started teaching high school 25 years ago, they were building brand new starter homes across the street from my high school. That's why I remember it. They were selling those for $110,000, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, called them vinyl village homes. You remember those, right? And so that was, you could buy a middle class product for 3 times my salary of $40,000 a year, okay, for a teacher's salary. By going to Hammett, I could have bought a house in a blue collar neighborhood for $40,000. And so 1 times. Just look at that. I just looked recently in that same school district. Teachers are making about $50,000 a year. So they're, in 25 years, that starting salary has only gone up about 10 to 15%. A starter home is $400,000. So it's 8x. And if you go out to a blue collar area like Hammett, that same $40,000 house is now $175,000. So it's 3x. And it's funny because I was listening to an older retiree saying, these kids just don't work their way through college like we did. And I'm like, no, because college was actually cheaper in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, even adjusted for inflation. Wages actually paid more in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Our middle class housing was more affordable in this country. And so the problem is when you look at rents, wages, and housing prices, it's never been more difficult to get onto the property ownership ladder. You have to understand that, because if you're looking at, let me just switch back here. Oh, did we switch the order of the monitors, Paul? Okay, I'm like, why can I not? It's so hard once you get used to it the other way. Wait, it's still not doing it right. Oh, thank you. Oh, whew. Big tech hurdle overcome. So when you're looking at a property in Winston-Salem, for example, and you're like, okay, am I interested in spending a couple $100,000 on a Winston-Salem house to collect $1,300 a month in rent? Or you're looking at an Indianapolis house and saying, why would I spend $130,000 in Indiana to get $950 a month in rent? You're not just buying a rental property, you're actually buying an asset in the most underserved asset class in real estate. So, median home prices in Indianapolis are $250,000 to $300,000. And so this $130,000 blue collar property becomes the perfect asset to sell to your tenant, because a house for 130, 140, 150, 160,000, that's the least amount of inventory in the country. Whether you're in Kansas City, whether you're in North Carolina, whether you're in Idaho. And so your investment guarantees that you're going to have a buyer for this house, because we're becoming a nation of renters again. That's the real story that needs to be told. If you go back, let me show you here. If you go back all the way to World War II, this is really interesting. So you look at home ownership from 1900, okay? And right around World War II, only 4 in 10 Americans owned their home. That's it. We peaked in 2008 at 7 in 10 owning a home. What changed to spike home ownership so dramatically in the 50s, 60s, and 70s? What happened? Why did we almost double the ownership rate during that time period? Fannie, Freddie. Fannie and Freddie. What did they do? Why did Fannie and Freddie help create such an easier path to home ownership, right? So what the government did literally was they said, okay, only 4 in 10 Americans own homes. Where are they getting loans? Local banks. If you walk into a local bank in 1940, what kind of down payment do you think they required? 3% down? 10% down? 30 to 50% down you had to have, okay? So your down payment requirement, and then would they do a 30-year mortgage in 1940? 10, 15 years at the most. They were like car loans back then. And so home ownership wasn't seen as part of the American dream. It was seen as something that the top 30, 40% wealthy could afford, and for the rest of the country, we're a nation of renters. Now, what's interesting is your home an asset or a liability? So should the American dream be that 100% of Americans own liabilities? So that, to me, I think that 60, 70% of Americans have no business owning a home. Who knows somebody that couldn't even afford to put sprinklers in when they bought a house, right? They're out there like doing their own landscape, okay? Because why is part of our American dream, and this is what's fundamentally wrong in this country with a lot of, I think, our financial values, is why is a big part of our American dream to buy a home and pay 30% of our income in interest payments over the next 50 years? Because let's be honest, we are not paying homes off and then becoming less debt-free. We get a mortgage when we're 20, and then what happens when our house gets a little bit of equity at 30? Cash out refi. And then what happens when we move at 40? Do we buy the same house that we've paid the mortgage on? No, we upgrade and we buy more and we get a bigger mortgage. And we have never seen the amount of 50, 60, 70, and 80-year-old debt that we see right now in this country. Meaning, culturally, we just get a mortgage until we die. And if you have a mortgage until you die, are you not renting? Let's be honest. Are you not renting for life? And your idiot realtor is like, well, you can write off the interest. What the hell does that mean? People don't even know what that is because it's not a tax credit. If your mortgage interest were a tax credit, that would be cool, right? Because then you'd be like, all right, I paid $20,000 in interest on my mortgage. I owe $20,000 to the IRS, zero. Tax credits are great, but a write-off, it just reduces your tax bill. You still owe. And if you're in the 40% bracket, it's not that big of a deal, especially since they streamlined the whole tax code and most people don't itemize anyway. And so the realtor's like, well, you can write it off. That doesn't mean you don't pay it. Like, we're so financially ignorant in this country. Let me give you another one. Megan, we love Mexico. I love Cabo. I love San Jose del Cabo. I love, like, the West. Guacamole. Love guacamole. So we're in Mexico like 2 or 3 times a year. The fact that I speak Spanish helps, but now it's funny because Meg took her kids down without me. A lot of people are like, you know, we were with some parents who are Idaho conspiracy theorists last week. Soft, low-key ones. They're like soft conspiracy. There's a lot of those. And so we were talking to them at dinner, and they're like, we've heard about babies getting eaten in Mexico. Like, how do you guys go down there? I'm like, okay. Idaho bunker hunters, right? And so they just like live in this like Facebook conspiracy echo chamber of weird lies. And I'm like, Meg, take the kids down home. She's like, weren't you scared? Meg's like, not any more than I was in LA or Portland or Chicago. Like, so anyway, we've thought a lot about buying. You can get a condo on the beach in San Jose del Cabo for $400,000. That's the one I like. On the beach, like literally 10 yards from the water. We went down there at Airbnb. You sit on the deck every night. There's surfers in the, like I love that. It's so relaxing to be in Mexico doing that. So we've talked about buying down there because you can't get on the beach anywhere in the US for $400,000 anywhere. Tell me a beach that you can, unless it's a trailer. Like you can buy a trailer park in Malibu for $1 million, right? So we've talked about it, and people always say to me, well, you don't want to buy in Mexico because what? You don't own the land. You don't own the land, so you only own the property. I'm like, that's America, dude. There's no land ownership in this country. Don't pay your taxes for 6 months. The county and the city owns your land. There's no such thing as true land ownership when you have a property tax. There's no such thing. A property tax literally eliminates true property ownership. You don't own it anymore in Iowa than you do in Cabo. They're both government ownership until they eliminate. That's why I think it's interesting that Florida, Ron DeSantis has been saying that. He's been starting to parrot that talking point. I'm fascinated by it because I'd love to, if they eliminate property tax in Florida, Florida becomes more sexy. Then I'll deal with high-priced insurance. I'm telling you, you got to think about investing that way. You got to look at it as like trade-offs. I would buy a rental property in New York and deal with taxes and rent controls if the following scenario. When I go to foreclosure auction, I'm like, I hate this property at this price, but I love it at this price.